Showtime is here, no time to fear. Carell is so near because showtime is here. So on with the show, let's give it a go. Carell is the one that you need to know. Now it's showtime.
Today's show is about bravery. Erik Dane, actor, diagnosed with ALS. We got to sit in on a media panel with him, and you're going to sit in on it too, as we explore life with disabilities.
Uncensored, unfiltered, unhinged. It's the Carell Cast. Listen daily on your favorite streaming service.
It is the Carellcast. I am Carell. Happy Tuesday, December 30th. Just one more day left in this year. Bye, 2025, child. Of good riddance. All right, a lot of you may not know that both of my parents were disabled. My mother was 4'9". She had an intermediary spike in her leg that replaced a bone. Think about that. She was bow-legged. She walked, kind of funny. She had child and adult stage rickets, which is a bone disease, vitamin D deficiency. It happened a lot in the 30s and 40s. She was blind at one point from cataracts in both eyes. She had 2 knee replacements at the same time, had to learn how to walk again. My father had ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, dyshydrate, eczema, all kinds of different maladies that affected him as well. And he was in electrolyte imbalances that often put him into the hospital. My father was often in a wheelchair with my 4'9" mother pushing him. I grew up in hospitals, emergency rooms, and doctor's offices. The VA a lot because my dad was on VA disability. And, people were very cruel in the 60s and 70s and 80s to my mom and to my dad being disabled. But more importantly, my mom and dad never saw themselves on television. There was never anybody in a wheelchair, well, except Ironside. Just people with disabilities of all types, they're just invisible. We don't really see them. And that is tragic because I never saw my parents on TV. I never saw a show where the mom was handicapped or the dad was disabled or both were disabled, but both my parents were disabled. And now, technically, I have a disability. I am on disability. My back is so messed up that I can't maintain the schedule that I used to maintain. Walking hurts. Just 2 nights ago, I woke up with a Charlie horse in my left calf, the one that keeps twitching, that was so painful, I jumped out of bed crying and stretched it out and did everything I could to make it go away. It's happened for decades now, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, again, because of my back. And so living with a disability, even now in today's world, we don't see a lot of people with disabilities on TV. That's why I love the show Silent Witness on BritBox. There's always someone with a disability on that show. Deaf, they have a little person on the show now. I've seen many shows nowadays have, a blind person, a deaf person, but not that many, not like every show. And so dealing with disabilities is hard enough for the disabled person. But the population of disabled people never see themselves in advertising, in anything. A lot of you may also know that I thought the doctors had to rule out ALS because of my twitching leg from the vaccine. And I went to the ALS clinic at Cedars in Los Angeles, where actor Erik Dane went. And the people that were there, still functioning, still, in wheelchairs or whatever, speaking on phones, even though their voices were shot, first of all, I was terrified. I think we're all terrified of ALS. I remember watching a movie in the 70s about the Lou Gehrig's disease. It was terrifying then. It's the disease of the weak movies. And it's terrifying now. Well, Erik Dane, gorgeous, vibrant actor, has ALS. He was diagnosed in April. However, he just did a guest spot on the show Brilliant Minds, which is on NBC, I believe, about a doctor. And I was invited to sit and watch a panel of the show's creators and Erik Dane talking about this episode and what it was like for him to do it and why it's important to get people with ALS out into the public view so we can find a cure. Because Erik Dane will probably be gone within 16 to 18 months. And that's the tragedy. So the rest of the show is going to be this panel discussion. I hope you like it. I hope you learned something from it. And it's got superstars.
If you're not visiting reallycorrell.com daily, you're missing out. Get the podcast, videos, and the blog, including recipes at reallycorrell.com. That's really KAREL.com.
Showtime is here, no time to fear. Corel is so near because showtime is here. So on with the show, let's give it a go. Corel is the one that you need to know.
Okay, I just want to reiterate before we go that it takes so much courage for Erik Dane to do this panel and to be on that show. This man was a vibrant, gorgeous actor, and now you can tell what ALS is doing to him, and he wanted to show people. And here it is.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Andrea Goodman, CEO of I Am ALS, and we're grateful to have so many of you joining us today. On this Giving Tuesday, we're honored to celebrate the extraordinary work behind NBC's critically acclaimed series, Brilliant Minds, and the team who brought one of its most powerful episodes to life. We're thrilled to welcome Brilliant Minds creator, showrunner, and executive producer, Michael Grassi, and consulting producer and writer, Dr. Daniela Lamas, the creative voices behind an episode that is rich, layered, deeply human, and speaks directly to our community. Together, and with the help of their writers' room, they've crafted a story that reflects the complexities, courage, and emotional truth of navigating an ALS diagnosis. We're also joined by acclaimed actor Erik Dane, whose body of work has connected with audiences for decades. In this episode, now streaming on Peacock, Erik delivers a deeply moving, grounded performance as Matthew, a firefighter confronting an ALS diagnosis. The storyline holds a personal significance for Erik. He's been incredibly open about his own journey and has partnered with I Am ALS to accelerate progress towards a cure. I'm also honored to introduce Brian Wallach and Sandra Abravaya, co-founders of I Am ALS, whose leadership has transformed the ALS landscape, including building a national movement, securing more than $1.2 billion for ALS research and treatments, and passing the landmark law, Act for ALS. They're an inspiration to us all, and we're grateful to have their voices as part of this important dialogue. This episode is a testament to the power of representation, collaboration, and truth in storytelling. If you're moved by today's conversation, we invite you to learn more about our work and ways you can make an impact by visiting iamals.org.
Welcome, everybody. It's an incredible clip from an incredible episode. I'm Sandra, it's my husband, Brian. We're 8 years into ALS, so I'll be translating for Brian as he shares today, but we're so excited to be here together. And my goodness, are we so grateful to Erik and Michael and Danielle and the team at Brilliant Minds for such a phenomenal, truth-telling, hopeful, hard-hitting, honest, all the things that one would hope for in a story about an ALS family in this episode. So just like incredible gratitude to start off with for the work that you all did. Today, I'm excited to play moderator and ask questions that we're excited to hear from our producers and from Erik. Just before we dive in, I wanted to share that one of my favorite things about the episode is really about the agency that you lose as someone diagnosed with ALS, and how you find yourself grappling for ways to still be in control and have power. And the thing you care most about in your life is your family, of course. And so Brian and I have, on such a deep level, experienced what it's like for someone with ALS to want to protect your family as the only thing you feel like you can control. And just like really brilliantly done in this episode. So, in any case, Erik, you've been already an incredible advocate, and Brian was very disappointed to miss advocating on Capitol Hill with you in your most recent visit. But we are coming to your next visit. So thank you for all your advocacy already. Thank you for doing this episode. And our, sort of let's get into it, and would love to hear you share with everybody, how did you become interested in guest starring on Brilliant Minds? What made you want to take on this role? And how did it feel to bring these pieces of your own lived experience into a scripted character?
Thanks, Sandra. Michael reached out to me, and we got on some calls and had some pretty in-depth conversations that helped inform sort of the story he wanted to tell. And the hardest thing for me to do was to separate myself from the character, because it was something that was so fresh, and it was something that was so real to me. I've never played a character who's going through something, and something I'm dealing with in real time, in real life as well. So it was hard, and there were moments where it was very difficult for me to even get the lines out. Um, but overall, I was really grateful for the experience. I found it to be a bit cathartic, and Michael and Daniela were so great, and sort of shepherding along this tired old actor who can barely speak, and put me in a position for great success, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, Michael and Daniela, in working with Erik, maybe Michael first, can you tell us about that creative process for the episode, and how you and Daniela partnered in the writer's room to pen such a beautiful narrative around Erik's character? And also, did you ask anything of Erik in terms of his performance before the shooting began?
Well, thank you, Sandra. Nice to meet you, Brian. And Erik, thank you for saying all of that. Well, I think this episode would not have been possible without Erik and his generosity and his collaboration. And from our very first conversation together, I think we knew we wanted to tell a grounded story, something that would be relatable to a lot of people. How does a family navigate a difficult diagnosis is one thing. And then the other thing in our conversations that became apparent is we wanted to create a character, in this case, a firefighter who dedicated his life to helping others. That's who he is. That's who at his core, he's always given. And I think for many people, it's very difficult to accept help. So these two big pieces of navigating a diagnosis for the person who's dealing with it, but also for the entire family, and also accepting help, are the two things that we were sort of circling in terms of anchoring our story for this episode. And in terms of the conversations with Erik, I feel like from the very beginning, we sort of, the lines of communication had to be very open as we sort of entered this process together. And I think it was just very important for us to meet Erik where he was, and Erik showed up every single day, and he blew us away, and he was incredible and was so committed to this character and this story. And it was incredible, and I'm very grateful to him. And it was an incredible process.
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry.
Daniela, would love to hear you share as well on that front.
Sure. Well, I was just thinking, I guess as we were talking that, I've watched medical TV forever. I mean, how I first knew of Erik Dane. And there are zebra diagnoses that you see on like every medical TV show, like over and over and over again. You don't really see ALS, right? And I had worked on other medical show previously. It pitched sort of various ALS. It's always nixed, right? Because it's nixed because there isn't the TV win. Where, oh, it was a misdiagnosis, or oh, we found a cure. But I think, I think working in the writer's room and working and talking to Erik and hearing some of the things sort of he was telling us about his own sort of journey so far, it gave us a way to tell a story that has a different kind of win. And I think being able to put that on TV and to work with somebody who is really dealing with these exact issues, gave it that sort of unique power that made it a story that works for television while also being true. And I think, yeah.
I just will interject that I thought that one of the TV wins that you did get out of it is that you told a story about how, well, there isn't a cure today. There are, right? The doctor says thousands of people working on this. There's so much accelerated research. And in the meantime, we want to support you, this character, to be as comfortable as possible. But also, you are responsive to the daughter's ask, right? To enroll in clinical trials, to get access to cutting edge treatment. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, I don't know anything about TV writing, but I felt as a consumer of the information, the win from it. So thank you both for that. Well, Erik, curious for you to share, maybe even beyond the diagnosis of the character that you have in common, were there other characteristics of the character you play that you felt are similar to your own character or personality? And maybe kind of continued from that, has this informed the kind of characters you want to play moving forward? Or have you put any thought to that?
Yeah, I found a lot of similarities between them. I mean, it's an obvious statement to make, but a lot of similarities, and some of the things that Michael and I talked about actually ended up in the story. I'm fairly limited in what I can do physically as an actor, but I still have my brain and I still have my speech, so I'm willing to do just about anything. I'll take on any role, but I think from here on out, it's gonna have to be, ALS centric. It's gonna be very difficult for me to play any other role where look at the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that I'm grateful that I can still work in any capacity. But yeah, I did find a lot of similarities between this guy and, it was funny. It was one day on set and I was in rehearsal and I was chewing gum. And the director said, you have to chew gum in this. You have to chew gum in this. We're going to pick a couple scenes where you're chewing gum. And I've never chewed gum on screen before in front of a camera, but it felt like me, and I'm gonna take that with me from here on out. But I want to keep chewing gum.
That feels like a good off-label use case, like to keep the muscles going.
It keeps you kind of in the moment. You have an activity that you're doing that. You can sustain.
All right, we'll be right back with more of this press conference with Erik Dane. And wow, already, right? I mean, just the courage. I don't know that I could do it. I don't know that I could go in public anymore. Wow. We'll be right back.
Patreon is the way to show you care. Subscribe today if you dare. Keep the show on there. Patreon is the way. Now it's showtime.
Erik Dane has appeared in hundreds of episodes of television and over 20 films. He was known as a sex symbol, a big hunk, and then he got ALS. Now, his life and the roles have changed, but he is still out there trying to make a difference. More of our conversation, not our conversation, but more of the conversation with Erik Dane and I Am ALS.
Well, Brian, don't ask to chew gum, okay? Because it's going to be a little. But Erik will chew all the gum for the two of us.
Yes.
Michael and Danielle, I'm curious, like, as you thought both about what this episode would mean to Erik and then also the broader ALS community, were there certain issues you grappled with, certain things you really wanted to get right as you wrote it?
I think one of the biggest things, and we talked about this in the room quite a bit. Two of our writers have family members who lived with ALS, so it was personal in the room. And one of the things that we talked about is that we didn't want to sensationalize this. We didn't want to. We've seen some medical dramas where people come in and they have a diagnosis and then there's a magical fix at the end or there's a magical cure, and that wasn't the story that we were telling with this episode. And it was important for us to not only raise awareness but do it in a way that didn't feel sensationalized and felt like it was a story that people can find themselves in. And that was really the biggest priority, is that people could watch this, and if it could reach out to someone and make them feel like they weren't alone and make them feel like I could see myself in this or I can see my family in this, I think that those were the things that we really wanted to hit.
Yeah, it was really uncanny how much you got this right. A lot of this, every scene I was in, I was just like, this is so sharp and intelligent. What a wonderful interpretation of things. It's horrible, but what a great interpretation of it. I think it represented. Yeah, I think it was a good representation.
Yeah, Brian, the moment where Erik, your character's like, no, I'm doing the breathing test again. I can do better. Oh my God, the number of times where I was like,
I've done that.
It is what it is, babe. Like,
yeah.
And my favorite part of shooting that scene was Erik ad-libbed something hilarious and amazing at the end of that scene every single time. And what made it into the cut was let her rip for her second one, for the second breathing test, which I love. But he had a very sharp ad-lib. He was making everyone laugh on set, especially Ari Krebs, who plays Dana, is a huge Grey's Anatomy fan. So when she learned she'd be sharing the screen with Erik Dane, it was truly a dream come true moment for her and many of us. Yeah.
Well, Danielle, you've written about ALS in the New York Times, and you're very familiar with the disease. And curious what, from your perspective, you really wanted to get right as well.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to get all of it right, but I mean, as everyone was saying, sort of the human experience of something without, to use Michael's word, sensationalizing it. I think sort of working in the ICU is, when I work in the hospital, and like we see people sort of facing a lot of inflection points, some that are huge, and some that might appear to the outside world to be smaller. What is it really? A machine strapped to the face at night, But like these moments, that that change sort of the nature of somebody's life and like how people navigate that stuff. I think is fascinating, and I think really showing the extent to which like I'm always amazed in the hospital. People are fucking amazing. Like you guys are amazing. Like Brian, you're amazing. Like Sandra, you're amazing. Like I mean, Eric, like you're awesome. And like people who, yeah. I mean, you said this to us in one of these calls, Eric. You didn't say I'm amazing. You said that like you've dealt with this with like a plum that you like didn't expect, you're like, I'm a whiner, but like I'm not really whining, I think was something like that you said, right?
Yeah,
That rings true.
yeah,
Hopefully I'm not
yeah.
misquoting you. That'd be an awkward one. But showing like yeah, like people have a lot of people, not everyone, people need support to have resilience. Like it's hard to have resilience alone in a vacuum. But when sort of called to the task, people can be awesome. And I feel like our show really tries to tell that story often. And I think, we wanted to show it with this. It wasn't, it's a really bad diagnosis. We didn't want to tell a dismal story. And I think, I think that's what we tried to get across, that people are funny, people have grit, people are awesome.
It's broadcasting from a completely different point of view. Yours. Listen daily to the Carellcast on your favorite streaming service.
Showtime is here, no time to fear. Carell is so near because showtime is here. So on with the show, let's give it a go. Carell is the one that you need to know. Now it's showtime.
Inspiring, heartbreaking, so many things today's show is. I Am ALS is the name of the show that we're watching. It has Erik Dane on it, the actor, and he's talking about his adventures with ALS.
Uncensored, unfiltered, unhinged. It's the Carellcast. Listen daily on your favorite streaming service.
I hope you're enjoying this. I really am. It is the Carellcast. This is part 2. To go from Erik Dane, beautiful, big, huge movie star, gorgeous guy, to the guy in the wheelchair within just a matter of months, and to still act, this takes courage. I want to hear more, so let's hear more.
Daniela, still practicing as a doctor, and probably really having a still weekly view of how families navigate these diagnoses. What was something that you really wanted to make sure to elevate in terms of how families connect around news like this, how they carry it either alone or willing to share the burden? Just curious for any of your thoughts on that front about families.
Yeah, I think, we tried to show sort of a range of reactions without that would be demonstrated without judgment. And so the fact that there isn't a right or a wrong way, and maybe somebody's initial sort of oh, I'll do this thing, it might not be realistic ultimately, and I think trying to and I think trying to tell a story that that built in the fact that we weren't going to leave this family with this idea that they would do it alone, and telling a story about something that ultimately isn't really possible, I think was a fear of ours. And so I think bringing in a larger community was really helpful. And I think there's so much, right? And we don't tell it all in the span of one episode, but really showing how the entire history of one's relationship comes to bear in these moments, I think was also something that we kind of wanted to be able to get into a little bit.
Yeah. The scene with the ex-wife with the psychiatrist was so compelling too. Really beautifully done. Okay, Michael, if you feel willing to spill the beans just a little bit, can you tell us where Erik scripted parts that weren't originally scripted?
Huh.
Well, listen, there definitely was some ad lib in there, and every time he did it, it was pure gold. And whatever was there definitely made it on screen because Eric's so funny and so fun. And so a lot of the magic also happened when we called cut and just getting to chat with Erik and Erik connecting with our cast and our crew was some of the best moments. Getting to collaborate with him, and I'm just very grateful for our time together on set in Toronto. He's amazing. Eric's amazing.
Thank you, Michael. I feel the same way about you. I had such a great time working on this show. It is a very, very tight group up there in Toronto. And it's not easy to get a crew together, actors and crew members and producers, writers and directors that are all seemingly on the same page, committed to a singular focus, which is to put the best product they can on the screen and tell a great story. And that's what everybody was focused on. I saw that right away. And it made me feel welcome and kind of comforted and was a familiar feeling to me. There was a feeling of familiarity up there. And so I had a wonderful time, Michael.
Well, thank you for saying all that, Erik. And it was important for all of us to step up and make Erik proud and make sure he felt welcome. But Erik showed up every day and stepped up, and he was amazing. And sort of like everyone really wanted to make this special, and the work is all on screen and in the story and in the storytelling and in Erik's performance. So I'm very grateful, very, very grateful.
You know, Erik Dane is still handsome. I have to tell you. I'd still go, wow, he's hot. And here he is talking about the challenges of acting with ALS. I hope you're enjoying it. We'll finish up when we come back with this particular interview. And I'm gobsmacked at the courage of all of these people, everybody that we're watching and living with this.
If you're not visiting reallycorel.com daily, you're missing out. Get the podcast videos and the blog, including recipes at reallycorel.com. That's really KAREL.com.
Showtime is here, no time to fear. Corel is so near because showtime is here. So on with the show, let's give it a go. Corel is the one that you need to know.
All right, it is the Corelcast, and on this next to the last day of the year, we are watching a press conference about Erik Dane being on the show Brilliant Minds, but more importantly, about living with ALS. None of us can imagine what it would be like to get that diagnosis. For a month or 2 months while I was waiting to go, I was terrified. Everything was a symptom. I was starting to think about dying within 2 years, and what about Ember? And it was just horrific to even live in the shadow of it. But to be him and then to continue acting, I just can't. So let's watch the final part of this I Am ALS, and then we'll come back to regular topics.
Well, I think that gratitude was expressed through this standing ovation that there was some news of. Looked like an incredible moment, Erik, and we would have been right there alongside everybody. It's remarkable the way you are leveraging your superpower to do something around communicating about this disease that no one else has had an opportunity to have. You're literally doing something no one has ever done before with this
Well,
disease.
I'm not about to concede my purpose for some disease. I just am not capable of doing that.
Well, Brian and I are very grateful to have you on this journey with us. I know Brian also wanted to share how he felt about the episode. And for Brian, He communicates now with eye gaze, and it takes a while. So I just want to take a moment, if you guys will all bear with me, to sort of pull up what Brian took some time to hammer out on eye gaze. So I shared with Brian that, we wanted to hear from him about from the perspective of someone who's transformed a lot of the legislation and federal funding and the medical community work around this disease. What impact do you hope this episode has on those broader conversations? And Brian, with eye gaze, typed the following that I'll read, which is: first, before I answer, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who was involved in this episode of Brilliant Minds. Erik's performance is raw and powerful and beautiful. And I'd also like to thank all the caregivers out there who are endlessly supporting people living with ALS. My hope is that this episode brings awareness to millions of people who may or may not know about what ALS brings onto families and the individuals diagnosed. It doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone, no matter your race or age or sex. And I hope this episode brings awareness that ALS isn't just a medical condition, but a policy and research and human issue. And Sandra, myself, and the entire IMALS community have worked for years to show that the system isn't permanently broken, that there's hope, and that when ALS is shown clearly with compassion, as you all have done in this episode, it becomes harder for leaders in healthcare and policy to ignore it, and easier for us to demand action. So, Brian, wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Brian.
Michael and Daniela, you cover some tough topics, including ALS, and you sort of talked about the win. How do you think? I shared a bit about how I think you won, but curious how you all, as a writers' room, felt like you were able to win and deliver the message about this disease that, exactly to your point, I mean, are you all truly the first to have depicted it? I mean, I have no recollection of it being depicted on a medical show before.
Sandra, I can't speak to that stat. I don't know the exact.
Let's say it's the first, Michael.
Let's say it's the first. Let's say it's
the first. Yeah.
Let's say it's the first. No, let's say that. I think the biggest thing that I feel like we accomplished altogether was the fact that there are characters with agency on screen. Erik's character Matthew, who has agency, and all of these family members who want to help, and everyone is involved, and they're having conversations about something that is really important and really difficult conversations to have. They are not easy topics, and having these incredible actors depict these characters, which I think families everywhere around the world can see themselves in, I think is the biggest accomplishment. This show was inspired by a doctor. His name is Oliver Sacks. And Oliver Sacks is a man who dedicated his life to writing about conditions that were often lesser known or very scary to talk about. He dedicated his life to destigmatizing mental health and mental illness. So when we started making Brilliant Minds, that's what we want to do with every single one of our episodes. And this episode in particular is an example of that, and carrying that torch forward. And that if we're talking about something, it's helping to destigmatize it. It's also helping to raise awareness. So I think that's the biggest win I would share about this. But Daniela probably has a more eloquent answer.
Oh, I was gonna say that was good. No, I agree. I think there's a drive in TV shows to have these, big escalations and alarms blaring and stuff like that. And I think being able to tell a story that that didn't sort of artificially import that, to tell a story about a person making decisions, and reconnecting with people that he loves, I think is a win. So yeah, I think.
Well, everyone at IMALS is very grateful for this work that you all have done. Erik, our last question is for you. You said you're not letting go of your purpose, which we love. We feel the same way. We're tripling down on our purpose, and we're excited to triple down with you. Maybe if you could share why and how you process this sort of new journey and sort of self-imposed responsibility, right? To use your superpower for this good. How do you think about that? What do you hope people understand about this journey, and how do you want to drive impact?
Well, the first thing is, like I was telling Daniela, I have no reason to be in a good spirit at any time on any given day. I don't think anybody would blame me if I went upstairs in my bedroom, crawled under the sheets, and spent the next 2 weeks crying. I was a little bit pleasantly surprised to realize that I wasn't built like that, because I thought for sure that was gonna be me. Anytime I got to worry about a diagnosis like this, I thought for sure I was gonna be the latter. I turned out to be the former, which is very encouraging. It's encouraging for me to know that I actually can have like a buoyant spirit in the face of something so horrible. This experience was one of a kind. I don't know that I'd ever do it again for anybody else. You know, I think it's imperative that I share my journey with as many people as I can, because I don't feel like my life is about me anymore. And it's something I've had to wrestle with, because I'm a pretty selfish person, and I would love my life to be all about me, but I just can't. I don't think I don't think I'd be able to move forward if that were the case. That's helping. It's been very propulsive. It's been a propulsive sort of component to my existence. Obviously I have a family at home, and they're the first priority, but this is such a big deal to me, to make sure that people are aware of what ALS is and what it's about, and more importantly, what we can do to combat it and improve the landscape, because it's so rocky and littered with hurdles and bureaucracy and all this other nonsense that we're trying to sift through so that we can get to a place where we can start working on solutions. And I think Brian and Sandra are doing a great job, and that's why I partnered up with them. So in closing, this whole thing was just such a wonderful experience. And this thing that we're doing today is I think it's so fantastic that we can get this out to people, let them know that, well, this is what it looks like.
Okay, I lied before turning it over to Andrew. I just want to say that right there, that there is hope, that there are treatments on the horizon, and that if this episode and sort of what Erik is doing inspires you to take action, that's amazing. That's the only way we're gonna drive forward towards the treatments and the cure that we think is right around the corner. So thank you.
Hear, hear. Wow, what an incredibly powerful discussion. Thank you, everybody. To NBC, Warner Brothers Television, and Berlanti Productions for your support. To Erik and Michael and Daniela, your openness, artistry, and commitment to raising awareness about ALS is making such a real difference to our community. We hope you continue to champion stories and communities like ours who deserve to be seen and heard. And if you're listening and you missed this incredible episode of Brilliant Minds, you can stream it on Peacock. New episodes air Mondays on NBC. To Brian and Sandra, we're all so proud of the movement you built, that is I Am ALS. Thank you for creating a community defined by courage, connection, and an unwavering belief in what's possible. As you've heard today, ALS is not just a storyline. It's a lived reality for thousands of individuals and families, and we invite you to learn more and join the movement by visiting imals.org. Thank you all for spending this time with us. Your support genuinely makes a difference. Thank you all.
Well, I think
Wow. Wow. First of all, I saw that episode. It is so moving. You know, art imitating life, or life imitating art. And we'll finish up right after this. Don't go anywhere. Wow. Just a big wow. All right.
Patreon is the way to show you care. Subscribe today if you dare. Keep the show on air. Patreon is the way. Now it's showtime.
All righty. You know, I took a chance playing that. Some of you probably aren't here. You tuned out, you went away, whatever. But a few of you stayed, and a few of you got inspired, and maybe gave. At the bottom, there was a way to donate. You know, when I watched that the first time while editing it for the show, you know, I thought to myself, what would you do? You know, I worry so much about my health. I do. As you all know, I have medical anxiety. But I act like if something were to happen, cancer, ALS, MS, whatever, that life would just stop. And it doesn't. It doesn't stop until you stop breathing. And I know that I would still try to be me, you know, up until, you know, I'd make it all a show. I'd take you with me to chemotherapy, or I'd show you what they were doing to me in the, you know, whatever. I'd let them operate on me. I'd bring you to the OR. You know, as long as I could speak, and then even if I couldn't speak, I'd probably write. But I would keep communicating. Erik Dane's an actor, and he wants to die an actor, and make more money for his family, obviously. And to see that kind of bravery, we don't see bravery like that. Every disabled person that gets up and goes out into the world knowing they're going to be judged, you know, I saw Erik Dane there and thought, he's hot, I'd still sleep with him, you know, but knowing that they're going to be judged, not by who they are, but first by what you see. And as wonderful as all of you are, you know that's still a thing. When you see a handicapped person, the first thing you do is notice the difference, not the sameness. And what we always forget is it's their body that's handicapped. Their brain, their mind, their spirit, their soul is still in there wanting everything yours does. People in wheelchairs. And this, I don't want to say trans people have a handicap, but it goes the same for trans people. They have a medical condition. And in order to be themselves, they have to go out and be judged every fucking single day by Trump, by you, by their bosses, by everybody. My mom is the reason I am the way that I am. My mother, Rose Marie Tremblay-Boulet, is the reason I can say fuck anything, fuck it all, you know, because I watched her get laughed at. I watched her not be able to do things that other moms could do, but still try to do those things. I've carried my mother. I've changed my mother's diaper. I've done so many things over my lifetime with my mom because of her disabilities. And then later, of course, when she was in the nursing home. And everywhere we went, especially when I got bigger, here I'm 5'10", mom's 4'9", and people were always like, that came out of you? They didn't believe we were mother and son because somehow a 4'9" woman just couldn't possibly have, an able-bodied young man. It's a world that is unforgiving. And the courage that it takes to be different. And that's what a disability really is about. I mean, they're not totally disabled, even quadriplegics. Look at Stephen Hawking. But you're different. You're not the same. And I know a lot about that, about being different. And it takes so much courage when you are different. Everyone calls me courageous. I see Erik Dane and I think that's courageous. I'm not courageous. I'm just being Carell. Him, that's courageous. So I hope on this December 30th, if you watched it, I hope that this inspired you, that it educated you, that it will make you a little more, how do I say this? I know you're all decent people, but maybe you'll go out of your way to talk to people who are disabled, to help, to volunteer, or to just treat them normally. The last thing a disabled person wants is to be treated differently. That's what the last thing a trans person wants, the last thing a gay person wants. The last thing that any different person wants is to be treated differently. And we don't set up the world for different people, particularly handicapped. Our country is pretty good, nowhere near where it needs to be. Other countries, it's a crapshoot. I mean, I can't imagine being in a wheelchair in London or other places where the city just isn't built for that. So, being different, no matter what it is, meeting challenges and still getting up and going outside and facing the day, still going to your job, now that's courageous. So I hope that this episode gives you some courage. If you're different, if you're handicapped, if you're facing an illness, he knows he's going to die. And he knows he's going to die within the next year and a half. He knows that. The only person to live with ALS beyond 3 to 5 years, Stephen Hawking. He had a slow-moving progression. And there are very few, 3% of people with ALS or somewhere around there, have one that progresses slowly. Everyone else, 24 months from diagnosis. And it usually takes a year just to get a diagnosis. We need to cure this. We need AI to help. We need to cure this and so many other diseases that affect people and just devastate their lives. Neurological diseases. And look at Michael J. Fox. There's another example of courage. Michael J. Fox. So draw inspiration from them and maybe realize your problems aren't quite so bad. I am Carell. Tomorrow's New Year's Eve. I will be here with a year-end show. So please tune in for that. Be who you want to be, be who you want to be, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody. Probably said that 5,000 times. Or maybe, I don't even know how many. A lot. And we'll see you tomorrow. Much love.
It's broadcasting from a completely different point of view. Yours. Listen daily to the Carell Cast on your favorite streaming service.